Welcome to Bonn Park. I'm Sarah Geidlinger.
And I'm Marshall Ward.
And I'm so excited about today.
Me too. Spooky and eerie.
Today we have Vincent Marcone, also known as My Pet Skeleton.
His artwork is so beautiful and evocative. And if you like the macabre, this episode will be for you.
We also talk about his filmmaking. We don't even get into the list of awards this guy has won. He's also a musician, and he's going to share some music with us.
Well, let's kick it off with some music.
So the band is called Johnny Hollow, and the members are Vincent himself, Janine White, and Kitty Thompson.
Welcome to Bonn Park.
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 Do you enjoy Bonn Park podcast?
If so, we would really appreciate it if you
Leave a review.
like, rate, subscribe, but most importantly,
Share directly from the platforms.
with your family and friends. That's the best way to get the word out to everybody, and more people will get to see our show that way. So click those like buttons and share our show. Thank you.
Thanks.
On with the show. This is it. Bonn Park is supported by the St. Jacobs Farmers Market. The market is a community landmark of more than a half century and is the largest year-round farmers market in Canada. Whatever you crave, you'll find it there. There's country classics like fresh apple fritters, cinnamon rolls, and Oktoberfest sausage on a bun, and new favorites like corn-wrapped vegan tamales, Greek gyros, and blooming onions. With almost 300 food and artisan vendors on site, there's something for everyone, and it makes for a great day trip with family or friends. The St. Jacobs Market is open Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays during the summer. Stay up to date on hours and events by following the St. Jacobs Farmers Market on Facebook, Instagram, or at stjacobsmarket.com. And here's a word from Summer.
I love going to the market with my family. There's so much to see and do. I love trying all the different foods, and it's a great tradition for our family.
Will they stay when they see what we have done just to be free? Waiting, we're waiting for a superhero intervention. We're waiting for a superhero intervention. Waiting, we're waiting for a superhero intervention. Waiting, we're waiting for a superhero intervention. I'm waiting for a superhero. Will someone save us from this storyline? I'm just standing here waiting for a sign. Will someone
Yeah, I get it. It's hard, and to keep like whipping out content. I don't know how you guys are doing it. So good job.
Thanks. I saw a local artist, and I cannot remember her name at the moment. But I think her profile is something like fuck content, let's make art. Like, yeah, we have to keep like me and Marshall make this podcast because it's a passion project, because we talk for hours anyway. And we were like, why don't we make this more interesting than just the two of us and record these conversations? And there's so many interesting people, but a podcast is a ton of work. It's a different kind of work.
Yeah, that's what, and we're just doing a little mini series, but it's, that's what we're finding. And it's about dark things that inspire us and how we create something out of them.
Well, you have two listeners for sure. We'll definitely listen to that.
I'll let you know if we ever get it to where we want it to be. So, yeah.
I think the one thing that I've learned about this, well, first of all, I've never done anything like this before ever. So I've learned a ton about myself. And I think you could say the same thing.
For sure.
Marshall, even though he's been interviewing for his life.
And that comes across in the podcast. You guys seem really natural, both of you, and very natural, and making the guests at ease. So you can tell you've been doing this for some time.
The one thing that I find comfort in is like, it's never going to be perfect. The sound's never going to be bang on. The song's never going to be just right. I'm never going to stop saying, oh my God, I love that. That's so cool. Like just stupid things that I say, so like once it's ready and you have the idea across, you just got to put it out there and let it live. But you know all about that because you're an artist. We should save all this for I
was going to say, speaking of dark things, I was looking on YouTube yesterday at how embalming works. I never really knew how it works. Mm-hmm. And it's pretty fascinating. It's a lot of massaging to get to you.
I have no idea how it works either, actually.
Yeah. Like I can't believe how they showed this one, like this body was basically like super tiny,
like it lost a lot of its moisture, so it
shrunk, and they brought it completely back to life. And the way they prepared it, I had no idea that was even possible.
It's it's kind of like anti-mummying, you know what I mean? It's like you're trying to make things look fresh and alive. And the smell, I have a bunch of friends actually that are with Roomwork magazine, and they used to have their magazine used to be in a funeral home. They took it over, and the smell in one of the embalming rooms still kind of lingered in the drains, and it still sticks with me. It's not a scent you'd want to have on your body on a daily.
I'm so happy Roomwork is still around. Like, I mean, that's a big, beautiful, glossy magazine, and the only way it's surviving is because people are still making the effort to come and find it and pay for it.
Absolutely. And they're a great group of people, all of them. They're fantastic.
It's one of those things that like every page is gorgeous. And if they try to take anything away, like the color or anything, there would be something lost. They have to maintain it. Yeah.
Where's it made?
It's done in Toronto. And there's been some local people here who have done, well, Ghoulish Gary, I don't know if you know who that is, but he went to Conestoga College as well. He was in my year, and he was the art director for that magazine for many years. It's in Toronto. It's Fangoria's main competitor, but it's much more beautiful.
You know what's really cool is when you go into Indigo, at any given time, there's like 8 horror magazines all there. Some of them are British. It's pretty cool. Like, what other genre of movie has multiple magazines sitting there?
That's true. Yeah.
And they all look awesome, like just all beside each other. One will have like Frankenstein, the next one will have like I Spit on Your Grave anniversary, and just anyways, love that stuff.
Yeah, it has kind of like a comic book aesthetic. Like the covers are just are like art for me. I've always enjoyed pouring through them.
Here we go. Vincent Marcone, thank you so much for joining us today.
It's nice to be here.
We're really excited to talk to you. I say this to every guest, but it's true. We are very excited to get into this and talk to you. I'm so glad that you answered my cold DM. Hey, we have this show. Will you come talk to us? It's all about local people.
Oh, my pleasure. I love that you guys are supporting artists and talking about, adding to creating culture locally is really important to me too. And I think we're now in a time in our city where we really need to embrace it. And we have a lot of interesting people to talk about. So I'm flattered that you consider me to be one of them.
We definitely do. Yeah, we've really found with this project that the well of interesting people is endless in our region. It just keeps going and going and going.
Yeah, and I think in this region too, I'm actually trying to make an effort of reaching out to other artists this last year, especially through the pandemic, because a lot of creatives have kind of put themselves in a cocoon, and not just because of the pandemic, but before this, everybody's working by themselves and working internationally, but really kind of not being part of the community for some reason. And I was one of those people too. So I think it's good that we actually try to reach out to each other.
Especially now with, you've been doing this long enough that you remember the old days of, kind of on foot doing it for yourself. But in the digital age now, even pre-pandemic, it's so easy to be working outside of your own backyard and not get to know those people.
Yeah, absolutely. But how old do you think I am? You made it sound like I
think you're younger than we are. That's for sure.
No, I don't think so.
You've had a 20-year career or more.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I'm so you've been doing this. Okay, sorry.
I like the idea of. I like the idea
for a second.
No. I like the idea of me having like a brown leather suitcase with my artwork tucked in and pounding on doors and like, do you want to buy a piece of art?
Didn't you have a portfolio at some point? You did.
Actually, when I was first a student, that is how you did it. You dragged your portfolio around. I went to Toronto and went to different magazines and said, hey, look at this. It was literally that. It was actually kind of fun in a way and nerve-wracking.
It's definitely character building. I think it's a different thing to be rejected to your face than online, for sure.
Yeah, I think that's a good thing, actually.
I think it is too.
Yeah, when you're a student and there were lessons that I needed to learn, and having such confidence in some ways, and knowing now, like working as an art director and seeing myself come up to art directors as a student, you really do see that you needed to develop a thicker skin so that you could get through. Basically, it's important as an artist to have a thick skin.
Otherwise, you're going to give up.
Yeah, exactly. And also, like when you're working with other creatives, other art directors, creative directors, they have a job to do. Their job's generally pretty tough, and you need to kind of deliver and help them out and, be a part of the team. Rather than, as a student, I remember, getting accolades from my teachers and my peers, and then being out there and in foolishly expecting the same thing. But when you're actually delivering work, not hearing, just delivering, illustrations or logo designs and not hearing back from them is an accolade in itself, because it means you did it right.
Or I find that like group art exhibitions where you just show up with your work and you lean it against a wall, and there's going to be one or a few judges, and then you're supposed to come back to you 2 hours later and pick it up, and the other has a tag that says, it's part of the show, or it's not. with no explanation. You just got to put it back in your car and go home. That's pretty hard.
I imagine it's like when you're watching an award show.
Right?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. I was going to say, imagine it's like when you're watching an award show and you can see all the reactions of everyone. Like you're trying to not react when you're going to pick up your piece without a tag on it.
Yeah.
It's never happened to me before because I
always like those award shows when some of the celebrities or artists
with the
show. No, when they actually show some disdain, like they're honest. Although I think it's put on, but I like an uncomfortable moment. So I enjoy that.
Usually creatives or actors or performers, like you should put on an opposite reaction just so that we can enjoy it. Exactly. I'm just going to go back to, you were talking about being a student and starting out where we were sort of hitting on that point. And you have an interesting education story locally because you did Waterloo and Conestoga.
I did. I went to University of Waterloo. I started there. When I was in high school, I never really thought that being an artist was a good path for me because, well, my parents weren't super encouraging in that way. They're encouraging with my creative, with my talent, but to actually have a job as an artist, they just didn't know that is something that you could really do and be successful. And so they didn't really encourage it. And then that kind of stuck with me. So I thought, well, I was good at science. And so I went to University of Waterloo in biology, and I started there. So I was studying vertebrate and invertebrate zoology, all sorts of science. I did really well on the biological component of my education and very poorly with physics and chemistry because I just didn't go to class. I found it boring. So quickly I had to maneuver my degree and into an arts degree. And about halfway through, I decided to go to Conestoga College. And I did graphic design. And then in my third year in graphic design, I decided to finish my University of Waterloo degree. So I finished both degrees at the same time.
So how did you have a portfolio that got you into Conestoga? Because you would have had to have a pretty decent portfolio at that point.
Leather-bound portfolio.
I I did actually, because I was drawing all the time. When I should have been going to those physics classes, when I should have been going to the chemistry classes, I was drawing weird characters in my books. So I really had a lot of stuff to show off. I know it was different from what the professors were used to seeing, because it was highly illustrative, and I was taking fine art courses at Waterloo too, so I had that to draw from.
So at Waterloo, who are we talking? Are we talking like Bruce Taylor and Art Green and Jane Byers? Yeah. Art Green, Jane Byers, Stu Oxley. I was really I lived pretty much in the printmaking department at the time in East Campus Hall. Yeah. And those were the faces I saw every day. I went to Waterloo too, so I know all those folks. Yeah.
Yeah. Jane Byers is such an interesting person. I really enjoyed her as a professor. She really taught me a lot. Stu Oxley too. Do you remember him?
Yep. And
they were both printmakers, and they were both so different from each other. I feel like I was lucky enough to learn from both of them. They had such different techniques. But
what's really neat about Jane is she's not one to just hand out compliments. So when she eventually says something like, it's actually quite beautiful, it really means something.
That's very true. She reminded me of Susan Sarandon. She has that vibe.
Yeah, totally. And Art Green, it could be a whole character in a movie.
Yeah, I have I don't have many things that I love, but one thing that I do love in terms of an object is a print, an Art Green. It's an exquisite corpse, and it's an exquisite corpse with, and I can't remember all of them, but Jane Byers, Art Green, and two other artists, and it's this beautiful monstrous rabbit, and I've got it on my wall.
The big rabbits, I know those.
Yeah.
One of my favorite memories of Art Green is just how going into his office, which was completely disheveled, a complete mess, and like people's assignments would be on the floor, and he'd like shuffle around and walk on top of the artwork. Like those were assignments. And
there was method to his chaos.
Yeah.
That's wild to me. I got caught there for a second because I want to tidy it, and I've never been there.
Right. Yeah.
That's a problem. That's a problem for sure.
Yeah.
So I just want to tell a little bit of a story about how I came to know your work. And this is through my best friend Francine. Hi, Francine. She doesn't listen to our podcast, but she's still my best friend. She has one of your pieces, and Francine is she has an incredible eye for art. I'm not great at buying art. I love art. I've studied art in my own time. I appreciate art. I miss museums. This is such a beautiful, wonderful place to be. But if you're in my home right now, there's really no art hanging up. I have like a sign from an old dock, and there's some records, and I just, for some reason, can never commit and don't put forth that effort. But I enjoy it so much when I see it. So any art that is hanging in my home, Francine has bought for me and brought over and said, "This is what you need." So I'm in Francine's house in her new home. And she has a new piece, and they're talking, and everyone's pouring drinks, and this is pre-COVID, everyone. And everyone is, jovial and starting the conversations, and music is playing. And all I see is something that I now know is called Celestine. It is a print of yours it's a little different from some of your other work. It is I always want to say moose, but I believe it's a deer-headed lady in a gown. To me, she's singing opera from her stance. And what seems like it could be a starry background or an underwater background, I'm not really sure because it's not an underwater image, is jellies floating in the air. I cannot stop looking at this piece when I go to her house.
Oh, that's wonderful. I love hearing that.
It's just true. I mean, it's just true. And I remember I said to her, "Look, where did you get this? What is this?" And she's like, "Oh, the kids showed it to me. This is my pet skeleton. You have to go and get some." And I haven't, of course, because I'm a terrible art buyer. But I have a picture on my phone of this piece that I just go back to and look at sometimes just so that I can like breathe it in and enjoy it.
Oh, that's lovely. Thank you. You have a good eye, by the way, because that actually is. So the head is with my imagery. I'll use my own photography and merge it into the mixed media. And so that is bits and pieces of a prehistoric moose. So it is a moose, not a deer. So you got that right. And in my head, when I had come up with that, I had seen it. It was actually this doesn't happen to me often. Usually I'll take bits and pieces of dreams to construct something new. But every once in a while, I'm lucky enough to see something very clear in a dream, and I want to recreate it. And that is one of those pieces. And it was this weird goddess this weird goddess at the bottom of a well with jellies just glowing and undulating around her. And that's what I was trying to build.
Oh, this brings a whole new meaning to me now, because there is light source. There is light in it. And I always assumed it was not an underground situation, but it could be this light streaming in from above. Oh yeah, I'll have to look at it again. Well, I'm going to have to buy a print. Okay, Sarah, buy a print of Celestine. Writing myself a note here.
So the fact that you took printmaking, that makes a lot of sense to me. A lot of what you do today must have been influenced by printmaking and the process of making prints.
Absolutely. In fact, I think printmaking has influenced my digital work more than even Photoshop. I'm constantly, even to this day, borrowing and taking textures from those old zinc plates and putting them into Photoshop when I'm layering things. And yeah, I feel like that masking and etching taught me a lot about how Photoshop worked at the time. Now, Photoshop, again, I'm aging myself because it's true, 20 years ago was a lot different than it is now. It was simpler. It was easier to operate. It was kind of layers and multiplying and screening. And I still use it in that way. And it is pretty much the same way you might go about masking and creating an etching on a plate, just doing it digitally.
The thing about Photoshop, and I pride myself on my Photoshop skills, but I know that I use maybe 10% of its power.
I know. It's deep.
Do you feel the same way? It's so deep. And I'm usually only using it for photos. Sorry to speak over you.
No, that's fine. Especially with the animation capabilities of it too. Like I have only played, I played a little bit, but it's an incredible tool. However, sometimes when a tool becomes so big and daunting that it makes it difficult for people to want to jump in. I kind of think of it like a double Dutch skip rope kind of scenario. When there's so much going on, you're not really want to, jump into it, which is why I've just started playing with Procreate. A lot of fellow artists have been encouraging me to give it a try. And I'm like, well, whatever, I'm using Photoshop. And now I've started to use that. And that is an example of a really great program where, the ergonomics of it is easy to start and it just kind of expands. I've done a really good job on making it friendly for the user.
Adobe has a similar product called Fresco, I think, but I do think that Procreate is a little more user-friendly and actually has a drag and a feel like real material might have. Does this making sense to you?
Absolutely. I've played with them both. In fact, Procreate, I just didn't bother with it because I've got the Adobe suite. I thought using Fresco, I actually still like Fresco, and I went to the Photoshop app, which I need to play with it a little bit more. But now that I've gone to Procreate, it's just easier. I feel like, I think Procreate is better for a tablet or iPad than the Photoshop apps right now, or the Adobe Suite apps.
Mm-hmm.
There's one piece you have. I saw the composition has two male northern cardinals on either side of the piece.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah. So this was really interesting. I love birding and bird photography, and the cardinal is a very difficult bird to photograph. I guess they've lived forever, being a red bird in itself, right? Has to keep an eye out for everybody and everything. And the bird, I notice bird photographers often want to capture the cardinal against white snow or something. It's striking, right? It's one of the most beautiful things to see. But somehow those cardinals in your one piece of work, I don't believe it's just the atmospheric area around them, but those cardinals take on an almost kind of nefarious crow-like appearance. How do you achieve something like that when you're taking imagery like a male northern cardinal that is 99.9% of the time rendered in a certain way?
Well, I'm glad you think that. That means I did my job. I think it's all about creating mood. And if you look at those cardinals, if it's the same piece, is it a cardinal perched on a shoulder of a man with a red streak across his mouth?
No, I feel it's a bit of a landscape where there might be something off in the distance, maybe a house or something.
Right. That's actually the cover for my my graphic fairy tale, The Lady Paranorma. And Yes, the reason why it's kind of nefarious and moody is because that fairy tale is about ghosts and cardinals. I really love the stories about cardinals, the lore where I don't know if you've heard this before, but there's lore that indicates that cardinals are actually our ancestors coming back to say hello and watching us and to remind us that we're there. And usually when I've come across a cardinal, there is kind of like they're so beautiful, and I've never seen like a bunch of them. It's usually one at a time or a couple of them, like a pair, a male and female. And it feels really, they have a light about, it feels like the light in the environment changes when they perch on a branch. And I was trying to capture that.
Mission accomplished.
Oh, good.
So we've talked a lot about your visual art, and I know all of it can be visual, but you're also a filmmaker. You've also done video work. You're in a band. You're a musician. So why don't you tell us a little bit about some of that work? We know like historically the video work has been, or the film has been something musical, but also storytelling at the same time. And it's been going on because you're so old, as we established earlier. I still say you're younger than us. Wait, let's get this out of the way.
You're 41.
Do you know?
No, I say 41.
41. I say 38.
Oh, you guys are just being nice.
Guess our ages.
I would have thought you guys are younger than me. I'm 47, so I would have guessed that you're about. I would have thought.
Oh, I'm never offended. So be honest.
39.
Meh.
And I would have guessed you were probably 42.
No.
Oh, see, we love you. I turned 45 in about a month.
Yeah, just about 50.
Yep.
Okay, so we're about the same age.
We're all the same age.
And,
that's right.
Yeah.
You have a youthful smile. You smile like my cousin Matt. I know you don't know him, but it's a compliment.
Okay. Well, hi Matt out there. If you're listening, he
does listen.
We have twin grins, I suppose.
Doppelgangers.
Yeah, that's right.
Sarah, let's pause for a moment to hear from one of the vendors from our sponsor, the St. Jacobs Farmers Market.
Today's spotlight is on the Tamale Girl, located in the Market Tent Building. This stand is run by Kathy Hanshaw, and man, is this stuff delicious.
I love the black bean tamale.
And I love the one with the sweet potatoes.
Hi, I'm Kathy Hanshaw, the Tamale Girl. Tamales are a traditional Mexican food. They're a steamed food, so they're a little healthier than your traditional Mexican fare, and they're wrapped in a corn husk, which we do not eat. So I have meat varieties, chicken, I even do a shrimp fajita, beef brisket, very delicious fillings. And then the other thing I do is make many vegan and vegetarian options. Tamales are naturally gluten-free and dairy-free. The two options I normally carry have a little bit of cheese. And then the vegan ones, of course, are just fully vegan, no animal products whatsoever. And then I sell them with sides of rice, beans. I make the salsas as well. I've got spicy, mild. In the summertime, I will also do a bit more of a tropical salsa as well. And I'll do some breakfast tacos some mornings as well. Pretty simple on those, pretty self-explanatory, bacon, egg, and cheese, potato, egg, and cheese. But tamales really are the food that I'm known for.
You can't miss the Tamale Girl. She's right in between her neighbors, full of beans and Ackroyd's honey, who she has great friendships with. And it's such a colorful and lively and unique looking booth. And you often see her there with her daughter working right alongside her. I love all their colorful, refreshing Mexican sodas that they offer. And the whole booth is just a little work of art.
So, of course, learned to make tamales in Texas, where I'm originally from. Family thing, learned from my family. And I've incorporated having my daughter work with me, Cleo, since she was about 8. She was coming with me to festivals. And now, of course, she works the front at St. Jacobs. She can tell you everything you can possibly think of as far as questions go regarding tamales. She loves them. I think that's one of the things. You got to love what you're doing and believe in your product. And I'm very lucky that I've got a great co-pilot working with me every Saturday and just being a super helpful young lady. I'm really proud of her. For 17, getting up at 5 a.m, you couldn't ask for more. She definitely has flair. She likes dressing kind of fun, very expressive. She's an artist as well. So a lot of that comes through here. And of course, I'm all for individuality and expressing yourself and diversity.
Let's hear from Kathy about how she sells her tamales.
A lot of people will order one as a hot food item, fall in love with it, and then decide they want to have more at home and cook on their own in leisure. So then I sell them fully cooked and frozen. And those are the ones I would be recommending someone to buy if they wanted to have more for their whole family to enjoy on a later date.
So on your next visit to the St. Jacobs Farmers Market, remember to visit the Tamale Girl in the White Market Tent Building. You won't regret it. Let's talk about that film work.
Okay, so I have no training in film at all. And when I was like, I started playing with digital media because back in the day when Flash was a popular program to use. And so I started doing weird things for my band and for my own website, like e-cards. Do you remember when people sent out e-cards?
Oh, yeah.
And I would do these really surreal, strange animations. And I had people to do this. So I would design them. I'd be the creative director, but I had like an incredible animator, Thomas Dazinski, who would do my bidding and add to it actually. And we would send out these strange cards, and it really was effective. Universal Music picked them up one day, and they asked me to do one for a metal band called Mushroomhead, who's still around to this day. And they asked me to do an e-card, and I didn't know that they were kind of like auditioning me. So I did this e-card. They loved it. And then they said, will you do a music video for us? And I said, I'm a graphic designer. I'm an illustrator. I can't do that. No. And then the label called me, which was Universal. And they said, you should really take this opportunity. And I said, I don't know how to I don't have a camera. I don't know how to do this. And they said, just do what you've been doing in Flash, but make a music video. And so I did. That's kind of like a go-to for me, like not knowing what to do and just like jump in and go for it and use all my skills to cobble something together, which is, and really take advantage of all the happy accidents and build on them. And I think that's why my film work is got a severe style to it. And so I've done about 10 music videos to date. I'd usually do one every couple of years or so. And sometimes they're live action and sometimes they're animated. So that's how I started. And they were always, most often there's music behind. The purpose was for a music video, but I have done a few short films as well.
So then let's also talk about your band, about your music, because it's not that often that somebody is sort of the whole package of all of these things together. Right. And you're doing it all.
Well, I am very good at collaborating with talented people. So with the music, I do consider myself a musician-ish. So I am an artist. I play with beats. I'll do backup singing. I'll do some vocals. I do a lot of lyric writing. But with Janine White and Kitty Thompson, they're two amazingly talented musicians, traditionally trained, and so they really add a lot to the group. And so we all have a really good chemistry together, and we really like kind of enhance each other's talents when we contribute to a song, and that's how that's worked.
And how did you guys come together? How did this happen and form? We
drank together. First, we were friends before. We would drink at Ethel's Lounge years ago. So the band's we were friends before we started to do anything creative, and we would be at Ethel's Lounge drinking and laughing and talking about a lot of creative things and just gossiping too, to be quite honest. We're really good pals. And I wanted to do a Flash site for My Pet Skeleton. So Janine White does most of the musical compositions for Johnny Hollow. And I asked her to do some sound design, and we started doing it. And we really got a lot of great feedback. So then we're like, why don't we try doing a song together? So we put the songs on My Pet Skeleton, and they were doing really well. And then we thought, let's try creating a record. And that's how that kind of evolved. And now we've been doing this for about, I think we're in our 18th year of being in Johnny Hollow. And we go into hiatus a little bit, and then we come back and we go back and forth.
Isn't that sort of great though, to have a project that doesn't drive, putting food on the table, feeding the dog?
It's true. And that, honestly, the only reason why that project in particular has survived, and I think it's going to survive for a while yet, is because of Spotify, which I wasn't which I didn't love at the beginning. I didn't even want our music on it, but it really drives we have a lot of people listening. We're approaching 45,000 different people listening to it a month. And so we want to keep like making content for that people. When you have people who are excited about what you're making, you keep making it. So that's why we're still doing it.
And the darkness we see in your work, do you have like a really early memory of when you were attracted to kind of this, I guess, hauntingly beautiful imagery? For me, it would have been the first time I was in video stores and I still would have seen VHS covers of movies like The Exorcist and Rosemary's Baby that I didn't know what those movies were about, but there was certainly something very alluring about them. Do you have similar memories of something you saw in your childhood that you thought, something here is really touching me?
Yeah. Yes. I can identify with that actually. But before that, so I seeing those horror movies on those VHS cassette tapes were alluring. It was kind of it actually felt like a Pandora's box. I knew I wasn't allowed to rent them most of the time. And so I was constantly like memorizing the backs, looking at the front cover design, record sleeves. Really, I remember my cousin Joe had all these Iron Maiden record sleeves, and the illustrations were terrifying to me. I didn't really like them, but I couldn't not look at them, and they were just like I was really allured by. I had always thought like a painting was something that was beautiful to hang on a wall, and then you've got this like crazy graphic. Do you know what the name of their character, their mascot? I can't think of it for evil
Eddie.
Yeah. And that really impacted me. But more than that, my Oma, I'm half Italian and half German. My Oma would tell me tales of all these strange fairy tales from Germany, Struwwelpeter being one of them.
I know the Struwwelpeter.
There you go.
Yeah, he shouldn't be sucking those thumbs because with the clip and the glop, the thumb would come off.
Absolutely. And if you go deeper into the book, there's some pretty
Casper won't eat his soup, but there's some heavily racist shit in there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Real bad stuff.
I know about the Krampus.
Yes. It's not unlike that kind of stuff. But no, I could go through them all. I'm not German, but my husband is, and this was his fairy tale. I'm like, oh, honey, I'm so sorry. They hurt you in this way.
Well, that affected me too. And my Oma, I was never scared of that lore. My Oma always told me tales of Struwwelpeter and some of the lore in her from Germany with like a wink in her eye. Like I knew it was scary and sinister, but she did it with such magic that I absorbed it all. I remember being a kid, like being 4 years old, and in her German deck of cards, there was a Struwwelpeter that was a joker. And whenever I would go over, I would just like hold on to it. Like I just wanted to hold the Struwwelpeter. So that really affected my work too. And then we lived in between Ayr and Roseville on like a 10-acre property. Our house was nestled into a forest, and just living inside of a forest brought all of this lore to life in my head as well. I
remember asking Steve's stepmother, I was asking for translations on a lot of this story because there's only so much you can get from the illustrations. And I remember saying, what is Stroll? I don't like, because on the cover, it's a very scary boy with his arms outstretched with the long fingernails, like Guinness Book of World Records, and his eyes are sort of not right. And his hair is wild. And it says Struwwelpeter. And I said, why is it Struwwelpeter? And she's like, I don't know. He's all Stroll. And I think that doesn't help me that the descriptor is Stroll. You know?
I think it means shock-headed Peter.
It must be because like,
yeah, well, I think there's a Black Peter.
Totally different
from
thing,
Austria
though.
or something. Yeah.
Or in the Dutch Christmas is the Santa Claus with the 6 to 8 black men. Yeah,
well, in German lore, depending on what village you're from, but like there's more evil Santas than there are good Santas.
We have so many stories of this.
There's a Black Peter.
Yep.
There's Krampus. There's all sorts of for every good Santa, there's 10 bad Santas. Which is very German.
Santa's kind of comes from the cardinal or the bishop, right? I guess it'd be the cardinal. The cardinal's red, right? So Santa comes from the cardinal in the church. And like Steve's my husband, his mom and siblings were called into the town square on Christmas Eve after Mass, and the big book was opened, and there'd be a check mark or an X, and you were either getting a little treat or you were getting hit with a switch and sent home. That was.
Wait, is your husband from Germany? Like,
he's
is he
German, like, but Canadian born. So his parents are German, but he's from here.
Okay, so where would he go to like see an ex and a?
This is his mom, and like when they were growing up there, they like the book in the town square, and then for his dad's family who lived out in the country, it was like they came on a wagon, and some kids would like get lost in the woods or like stuck between furniture trying to run away from Santa because they were terrified that they were going to be put in the sack and dragged to the next farm.
Yeah, I had heard about that actually. That's my Oma would talk about. First off, my Oma and Opa with my own mom, they would if the kids were bad on a year, they would hang a whip on the tree instead of gifts. Oh boy. And they would never use the whip, but like it was a sign like they fucked up, you know. Yeah. My Oma and Opa telling me this one tale of, and to this day, I think it's true, and this would be an incredible horror movie. But they told me that there was a Krampus going from door to door, because that was a tradition, like you're indicating, and that they would go. I think it's around December 7th, and they're there to scare the children before Christmas, and they would even like take the children and walk them around the farm and scare them with their burlap sack and a switch. Yeah, one year, several children didn't come back, like they just disappeared, and to this day that haunts me, because I wish I would have like cross-examined them a little bit more, because they were insinuating it was like a serial killer who had come to town, because they were all dressed up in garb. You didn't really know who was the Krampus, and he came around.
Oh my God.
Yeah, isn't that awful?
I've seen these old postcards where the Krampus sometimes has this ridiculously long tongue, like just.
Yeah, well, he's close to the devil. Like he's an incarnation of the devil in many ways.
Yeah, but his tongue, like everything else, is kind of black about him and gray. And then there's this red tongue that just goes down to his waist in some of these pieces of art.
I'm infatuated with Krampus. Every year, I didn't do it during COVID, but every year I do something called Krampus Kindle. And so my studio is right next to the city hall. So when the Chris Kindle market happens, I do Krampus Kindle, and then I open my studio and people come in and buy my work. So it's kind of a nice head nod to what's happening in downtown Kitchener. It's been fun. I've done it like 3 years now, and it's growing a little bit bigger every year, except for obviously last year.
Can you go a bit deeper into that imagery? We were talking about, first of all, seeing VHS covers, but also there must have been other things along the way. You talk a bit about your dreams, and what kind of context do those dreams have? Is it just imagery, or is there something is there a story playing out when you have these dreams? In
my life, I've had a couple of dreams that have been very specific. Celestine would have been one of them. So that happens very, very rarely. I remember one time, this has happened to me twice. And I had a dream about a woman who was showing me her portfolio and was flipping one painting to the next. And I remember thinking, wow, this is so incredible. I wish I could get there. And then I woke up, and I remember waking up feeling kind of envious of this person coming up with that image. And then it took me a moment. I was still lucid, where like, oh, my brain actually came up with some of that, with that imagery. And I quickly like jotted it down, and I've done a couple of pieces from there, but that's very rare. Like very rare. What usually happens is I'll remember, like most people, bits and pieces of dreams. And I've trained myself to remember, and like I have a dream journal where I just like jot things down. And they're like, sometimes they're one word, sometimes they're describing a texture or colors or animals. I have a lot of hybrids that happen in my dreams. And so when I'm kind of blocked and I'm creating something, I'll go into that journal and I'll take bits and pieces of those notes and put them into a piece. So I'm not trying to reconstruct a dream. I'm just borrowing things that are kind of deep in my brain and putting them onto a page to make things more interesting. And I think my theory is, and it's just a theory, is that sometimes when people feel like they kind of recognize something in my drawings, I like to think that from a Jungian point of view, Carl Jung, that if we have common dreams and common symbols and common archetypes, that people are noticing things that they might be dreaming about too. And they're seeing some images that they may have had in their own brain at some point.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like you are probably what's really compelling about your work is you sometimes provide just enough info that the viewer feels compelled to fill in the blanks. I think about a movie like one of my favorite horror movies the last 10 years, I guess, is The Conjuring. And
that I love the series actually.
And what's so amazing about Conjuring and Annabelle is the scariest, darkest moments are things where you really can't see much of anything. There's like it's a bedroom and there's something in the corner, and you can't quite make it out, and you never do quite see what it is, or just it could be a sound like a clap, right?
Yeah,
and that to me is the real brilliance of horror, is not giving everything to the viewer. And do you feel that that's a bit how you approach your work?
First off, thank you. And yeah, it is. I try to create, sometimes I fail a lot, but when I'm successful, I'm trying to create a mood and a moment of a narrative that hasn't really come into fruition. So that's what I'm trying to do, to create a moment of a story that people are trying to figure out. And if I can get there, then I've done my job well. So I am purposely trying to do that, to have the viewer question, like, what is this protagonist doing? Why are the colors in the way they are mixed in the way they're put together? Using shadow and texture is also really important to me. So yeah, I am trying to do that, and using texture to obscure a silhouette really helps that approach, and I do that a lot.
Is this maybe the key to everything? I'm just having a moment where we were talking to Sassy Ray, a burlesque performer, and that's the whole thing about burlesque. You're not giving everything away. You don't get to all the little bits and pieces. There is something left to the imagination that leaves you wanting more. Same thing that we're talking about with some of the themes in your artwork. Same thing with some of my favorite songs. They never get to that last chorus that you're craving so badly, and they end a little too quickly, or maybe a note or a beat before your mind can fill in the rest, before you're really ready to let that song go. Is that what it is? Is that the secret to creating? Like, leaving something left for you?
I think it's a good approach. It's also kind of interactive. You really are including the viewer when they're trying to figure something out. It is a bit of a dance if they're included in trying to figure out or puzzle what your intention was. And I think that's a good technique.
Yeah, I think it comes down to the beauty of simplicity. I use the example again. One of the scariest moments in The Conjuring is just hearing this.
I'm going to be thinking about this when I'm trying to fall asleep, Marshall.
Trying to figure out where it's coming from. Or a movie like The Changeling from 1980. Like there's a room, the camera's in the room for like, feels like an eternity. And suddenly one piano key just goes boom, like down by itself. That to me is 100 times more terrifying than something jumping out.
Well, and for me, it's more, there's a beauty in that too. Like I like my horror and my fairy tales to have a little bit of dark and a little bit of hope. When something's so completely hopeless and fearful, like I lose interest. When something's too happy, I don't care about it. I could give a shit. When something's too awful, like that's one of the reasons why I actually I gave up on The Walking Dead. It was so hopeless and so gruesome. They would have kept me if there was a little bit of light in there, but it just was so depleted. Like I became interested in it. And I think navigating between the two, like Blair Witch Project does what you're speaking of really well. Like they never showed the Blair Witch. It was all insinuated, their reactions, and
I've never felt the same about camping since I saw it. Not once.
That was terrifying. And the marketing behind that movie was just incredible too. So I think there's something to be said about like holding back and not revealing everything. I think it's a technique. I don't know if it's the answer to everything, because there are, but I think it's a great technique, and I try to put it into my work, but it's not easy to do.
And having said that, you sometimes place let's say the character, the main figure in a composition right central in the middle of the piece, right? So there's are you going for basically like some kind of like iconic imagery, like just the strength of that character dead central?
I pay attention to the way kids create a picture, like a big, solid, strong horizon line. And then usually the characters are like very much in the forefront. So my compositions are actually quite similar to the way a kid will draw. Strong horizon line, and then character in the forefront. I do that quite often because I think we see the world that way from a very early age, and I find it kind of charming. So I think I even have some of my old drawings as a kid, and I go back to them, and I think I'm still doing that in many ways.
Well, thanks for meeting us in Bonn Park. Please like, rate, and subscribe to our podcast on the platform that you're listening to. And follow us on Instagram and Twitter at Bonn Park Podcast. Original music by Alan Lung.